Amen. Hebrews 11, and we'll conclude tonight. Next Wednesday night, not next Wednesday, next Tuesday night, we'll be up in the auditorium for revival. Brother Gravely's preaching that, isn't he? So I'm sure that'll be good. And then the following Tuesday night will be test night, and we'll pick up with the new semester also. So do remember that. And I'm going to be, I think Brother Jeremy's continuing the book of Acts, isn't he? If I'm not mistaken. And then I'm going to be teaching the spiritual leader, Brother Mike Edwards, a good friend of mine. Just finished a new book on that, and man, I'm telling you, it's got some great stuff in it. And matter of fact, he sent it to me before he ever got it printed, and let me read through it and asked me my thoughts on it. And it's really there's a lot of good practical things in it that I think that we can apply to us as leaders today. And I was reading through some of it again today, and that book will be a little bit different. I'll give you a homework assignment, somewhere between 60 and 200 questions. I don't know how many there'll be yet. I'm just going through it, highlighting. You ought to see y'all's faces right now. I'm just going through it, highlighting what I think you need to remember. And so there's 16 chapters, and I think it's averaging out about 3 or 4 questions to a chapter. Well, that ain't but 48 questions. I need to add some more questions to that, don't I? Huh? No. But it's really good. And in it, I'll go ahead and say this, which I'll say it again. This right here is about to drive me out. Drive me crazy. I don't know what it is, but I can't put my foot underneath there like I normally do because it's sitting there. But anyway, I say this whenever we start teaching. There's a lot of practical things in it that is just practical leadership. And of course we're going to use the Bible as we go through it, but there's going to be a lot of just practical things in there. One of the things that I was looking at today was types and that he deals with in it. And one of them is positional leadership. And he talks about how positional leadership is you just say, you go do that because I'm the pastor. It's nothing to do with love. It's nothing to do with loving the people and getting involved with the people. It's just you go do. I said go do that. Sunday school class, I said, you don't sing in the choir because I'm the pastor, and I said you can't sing in the choir. And he goes through, I don't know if you know Brother Mike Edwards, but he's a great preacher, a good friend of mine, and it's a lot of good stuff in that book. So, matter of fact, I'm looking forward to being with him here in a couple of weeks, preaching in his Jubilee. But it'll be good. All right. Hebrews chapter number 11. And I knew this when we started, that we would not get through all of these people. You would think you could teach one chapter of the Bible in 11 weeks, but I knew we wouldn't. But I want to look at Moses tonight and conclude on Moses tonight. And I enjoyed last Tuesday night the stories of the faith stories that you shared with us. And encouragement to be. Look what the Bible said in verse number 23. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he had respect and the recompense of the reward. And we'll stop right there. Let's pick up we'll stop right there. Let's pick up verse 27 first. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Now, I want to say this. When you look at the life of Moses, my soul, you can see a life of faith in the life of Moses. Matter of fact, tomorrow night at our church, I'm going to begin a new series on moving forward. Moving forward. The other night at Brother Jonathan's, I preached out of Exodus 14 on some things you'll find when you go forward. And the other day I was at Pages, and there was actually a book in there that was entitled Forward. And I picked it up and began to look at it. And make a long story short, I got it on Kindle just because it's a whole lot cheaper to get them on Kindle. And have it everywhere you go. But anyway, I began reading through it, and again in that book there's a lot of practical things that we can apply to our life. But moving forward, and when you look in the life of Moses, that's what he was doing constantly. He was trying to lead the children of Israel forward. And you want to talk about faith, man, that night, could you imagine at the Red Sea, or it was probably day when they got to it, because the Bible said, the Bible said that cloud removed from before them and went behind them and made it dark to the Egyptian army, but light to the Israelites to go across the Red Sea. But could you imagine Moses that day with 600 chosen chariots and then a lot more than that pursuing after him as he stretched that rod over the Red Sea? Could you imagine the faith that he had that day? And his life is just, it's a huge life of faith. When we study the life of Moses, man, I love to study it. Think about this. Moses was fortunate enough to have believing parents. For them to hide their baby son where they did was an act of faith. It took faith to hide their son in the very place where other babies were drowned. The parents of Moses took him to the very last spot which carnal reasoning would have suggested. Now think about this. Whether you think of Moses as a liberator, a lawgiver, or a leader, you are confronted with a man whose greatness increased the more you knew about him. Matter of fact, the key word is Moses. In Moses' life is the big word refused in verse number 24. He refused some things. Moses knew how to say no to the things of this world. And how did Moses say no to the things of this world? He said it by faith. He said it by faith. Moses could, and I'll say more about this in just a minute. Moses could have had anything. Moses said no to the throne of Egypt. He could have had anything. And how did he do that? He done it by grace. And I believe he done it because of his faith and trusting that the Lord would take care of him. Let me show you 3 or 4 things here. Number one, as we look at this, Moses overcame the throne of this world by faith. He overcame the throne of this world by faith this afternoon. Moses had been found in his ark of bulrushes in the reeds along the banks of the Nile by no less a person than the Princess Royal of Egypt. She had adopted him and taken him into the palace to be trained to rule. Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians according to Acts. Moses was trained in the art, science, religion, history, and the crafts of war of the Egyptians. Moses excelled, I personally believed, in every bit of that. When he was a grown man, the throne itself appears to have been offered him. How did he overcome this temptation? Now you think about that. The throne itself could have quite possibly been offered to Moses. Now how did he say no to that? How did he overcome that? He overcome it by faith. Verse number 24, Moses walked by faith. By faith he declined the offer of the throne. He went further. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. How did he do it? It's a faith chapter. He done it by faith. He trusted God. He denied and refused the things of this world by faith. He done it by faith. Moses gave up the throne of this world by faith. Moses refused the throne of this world. The word refused in the Greek literally means to reject, to deny, to totally disown. Moses cut himself off from a promising career as an Egyptian. Moses said by faith, I'd rather be a slave fulfilling God's purpose than a king of Egypt. God's purpose was more valuable to Moses than an Egyptian position. Can I say that again? God's purpose was more valuable to Moses than an Egyptian position. You know what? There's a lot of people today that right there is where they lose it at. Man, if they can have an Egyptian position, if they can have that, it's all about a position to them a lot of times. But Moses, by faith, overcame the throne of this world. How do we say no to the things of this world? We do it by faith today. We trust God by faith today. I've had people talk to me before at the church, and I understand that there's some people that has to work on Sundays and Wednesday nights. I understand that, and I'm thankful for law enforcement. I'm thankful for EMS. I'm glad that if I'm at church on Sunday and pick up the phone and dial 911, somebody's going to come help me. I'm thankful for that. But there's some that has come talk to me and said, you know, preacher, I can take this position, but if I take this position, I'm going to have to work on Sunday. And the only reason I would take it is because it's a big pay increase. And I tell them exactly what Daddy always told me. Pray a whole lot and move real slow. And then I ask them, what is that for? What will it benefit you? What will it benefit you? Well, you know, I could have a little more of this or I could have a little more of that. By faith, Moses said no to the positions of this world. He said no to Pharaoh. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. That's like Donald Trump saying, I'll let you be my son. I'll let you have everything that I've got if you'll deny the things of God to us. That's exactly just practically where it's at in the life of Moses right there. But by faith, what did he do? He said no. You see, God had a bigger plan for Moses than what the Egyptians did. God's plan, my daddy has said this many times. He said, son, for you to become the president of the United States of America, you would have to take a step down from the call of God on your life. He said that's the highest calling and the highest position you'll ever have in this world is to be a God-called preacher in the center of His will. So by faith, he overcome the throne of this world. Number 2 tonight, Moses overcame the thrills of this world by faith. He overcame the thrills of this world by faith. Moses refused the pleasure of sin by faith. Life would have been much easier for him had he remained a leader in Egypt, except for one thing. To remain in the palace would have been sinful. To stay in the palace would have meant ease and affluence as compared to the trials and suffering of his people, the children of Israel. But you know, by faith, he refused that. By faith, he said no to the pleasures of sin. By faith, Moses refused to enjoy his life in his own way and chose to employ his life in the will of God. By faith, he chose to live his life for the eternal. By faith, he chose to live it for the eternal and not the temporal. Can I say this to you tonight? We should choose to live our life for the eternal and not the temporal. For the eternal and not the temporal. What I've got in this world will soon come to pass. I'm going to die one day, and if my kids are still here, they'll get what little that I've got and blow it more than likely. I tell Daddy all the time. He was going to buy that tractor a couple years ago, and I said, you might as well buy it. He said, well, why you say that? I said, because after you die, if I want one, I'm going to use the money and buy me one. And he said something about a truck the other day. And I said, you might as well buy one. Whenever you die, me and Rebecca's going to spend that money. I'm picking around with him a little bit, but being truthful at the same time. But you know what Moses was saying? He was saying, yeah, I'm going to say no to the thrills of this world. It's not the things of this world that matters today, because the things of this world will soon be past. What is our life? It's a vapor. It appears for a little time, and then it vanisheth away. It'll soon be past. But men and women tonight, it's the eternal things that matter. It's the eternal. Brother Ryan and I was talking the other day, and he said, I've done my job for years. And he said there was a time that, man, I lived for this job. He said, I loved it. And he said, now I'm not going to lie to you. He said, I still enjoy my job. I still enjoy getting into things and you know what all he does. But he said, you know, preacher, he said, the longer I'm at the church, he said, the longer there's just a desire in my heart to be more flexible where I could be at that church more and give that church more. Brother Chris and I talked about it. Brother Jonathan and I talked about it. Brother Jonathan just had a huge career change yesterday and left the phone company he'd been with for years, a huge position there. And I don't want to say nothing out of context here, but took a humongous pay cut. And he said, preacher, he said, I just feel like I need to be there more for my church. You know what they're doing? Here's what we're doing. We're refusing by faith the thrills of this world. He refused the pleasures of sin for the season. You know what? The Bible does say that there is pleasure in sin, but it is for a season. It will come to pass. Moses could have stayed there out of God's will and enjoyed it for a little while, but it would soon come to pass. So when we think about it by faith, Moses overcame the throne of this world. By faith, Moses overcame the thrills of this world. But can I say this to you tonight? By faith, Moses overcame the things of this world. He overcame the things of this world. Look in verse 26 and observe the word esteeming. The word literally means to weigh in the balance, consider the options, evaluate the worth, and consider the value. Look in verse 26, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. You know what he was doing? This says Moses considered God's will of greater value than all the things of Egypt. Than all the things of Egypt. What was he doing? He was overcoming the things of this world by faith. You know what he's saying? When he looks at God's will and he looks at the things of Egypt, here's what he's saying. I'm going to weigh those in the balance. I'm going to consider the options. I'm going to evaluate the worth or consider the value. And he said, when I weigh the things of this world with the things of God in a balance, by faith, I'm just going to take God at His word and I'm going with God's will for my life. By faith, that's what he done. He refused the things of this world. I thought about this. The very things that people spend their lives trying to get, Moses rejected. The very things that people spend their life trying to get, Moses rejected that day. He rejected the treasure in Egypt because he had realized that God's peace was more valuable than Egyptian possessions. Can I say that to you again? He rejected the treasures in Egypt because he had realized that God's peace was more valuable than the Egyptians' possessions. Boy, that's good right there. I wish I'd have come up with that. I just wrote it down from somebody else. But man, that's good. And you know, that's the way that we should be. When we look at this thing, I promise you the things of God are way more valuable. But there's a whole lot more peace at night when you lay your head down and go to bed when you walk in the presence of God. I thought about this. You cannot purchase lasting happiness. You cannot purchase lasting happiness. You can buy temporal happiness. I wrote this down. You can buy it for a short time. You can go out and buy a new truck. You say, am I happy? Yes, I'm happy. You bet I'm happy. But you know what's going to happen? In a little bit of time, that happiness is going to wear out. And you know what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to buy another one to keep yourself happy. I mean, look at how many vehicles Brian Cardwell goes through a week. I mean, his extent of happiness is very short-lived. For you that's watching and don't know him, he's a car dealer, all right? Let me clarify that. But when you think about that, how many people do you know that's like that, though? This will make me happy, and this will make me happy, and this will make me happy. I know people, this is the truth, that's been married 6 and 7 different times. I mean, if I couldn't figure it out after twice or three times at the most, I'd just quit. I just quit. I tried it one time and that's enough. I made a vow. But anyway, think about this. They tried their best to purchase happiness. You can purchase a temporal happiness. But you know what Moses was saying? He was saying this, when I weigh in the balance the things of God and the things of this world, by faith I'm just going to trust God and take God at His word. That's what he was saying. You can buy happiness, but it is temporary happiness. It doesn't last. The things that you've thought, I just got to have. How many times have we said, I just got to have that? Where's it at now? In the trash can is what she said. I just got to have that. I just got to have that. You know, where's it at now? As a matter of fact, the Bible talks about contentness, being content with such things as we have. But we'll get off of that because we all struggle with that every once in a while. But happiness will come from the Lord. That's why Moses said, I don't want pleasure. I don't want possessions. I don't want a position. They don't last. He was taking the long look and he realized that the peace of God was more valuable than any possession, any pleasure, or any position that the world could give. Moses gave up the very three things that most people spend their entire lives trying to accomplish and achieve. Why? Why did he do that? Why did he reject position, pleasure, and possessions? Well, verse number 26 tells us he was looking ahead. He was living by faith, looking to eternity, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. Verse 27, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing Him who is invisible. Let me tell you the way Moses made it. He made it by faith. He made it by faith. He made it by faith. By faith he overcame the throne, or by faith Moses overcome the throne of this world. By faith he overcome the thrills of this world. And by faith he overcome the things of this world. I wrote this down in closing. There was faith which surrounded him as a child. His parents had faith in putting him where he was. There was faith which separated him from the crowd. By faith he was separated out from the crowd. And then there was faith which sustained him in his conduct. There was faith which sustained him in his conduct. How did he conduct himself the way that he did? It was a life of faith. I said it a while ago. How did he stretch that rod out over the Red Sea? It was by faith. How did he throw a tree in the midst of the water at Marah? It was by faith. He just believed God. He believed God. Father, thank you for this time that we could spend together. Thank you, Lord.